Life for a penguin can be harsh, but for this colony off the coast of South Africa, life is about to take a deadly turn. The question is, can they survive? Hi everyone, I'm Julie Scardina. Everybody loves penguins, right? Look at them, so cute, waddling along in their little tuxedos. But don't be fooled, these guys are serious survivors, able to thrive in some of nature's most extreme conditions, as you're about to find out. In today's program, you'll witness a colony of African penguins facing a life-threatening disaster, and the amazing call heard around the world for people to come to their rescue. You'll meet a special penguin with a royal namesake, and a feathered ambassador that almost came unglued. All this and more coming up now in this episode of Saving a Species, The Penguin Story. Some people might think Africa is an unlikely place for penguins. But the southern tip of the continent is home to a fairly large colony of African penguins, at least by today's standards. Like most other species of penguins, the African penguin numbers are in decline. Less than 10% of the original African penguin populations remain. And with a worldwide total of about 56,000 breeding pairs, the African penguin is the only penguin species that breeds in Africa, and it's found nowhere else on the planet. They're listed as vulnerable for a variety of reasons. From early factors like the harvesting of eggs for food and habitat alterations to more current threats such as pollution and overfishing, which jeopardize the penguins' food supplies. Today, African penguins are a major source of pride and entertainment for the residents of South Africa. Colonies found in seaside villages on the mainland, like Simonstown, bring tourists and their cameras to the area for year-round amusement. So it's no small wonder that when a tragic disaster threatened their beloved penguin population, locals and tourists alike responded in astounding numbers.
Cape Townians, we're a great bunch of people, we rock!
June 23, 2000 marked a tragic day off the coast of Cape Town, South Africa, when an ore carrier called the Treasure developed a hole in the hull and sank 6 miles offshore. 2 of its fuel tanks ruptured, spilling over 1,000 tons of oil, and the resulting slick quickly hit Robben and Dasson Islands, both major breeding sites for African penguins. And to make matters worse, the spill occurred in the middle of the penguins' breeding season, putting thousands of birds at risk. This was to become the biggest evacuation and rescue attempt of wild birds in history.
It's an important cause over here.
The call for help was heard around the world. And within hours, governments, agencies, businesses, and individuals partnered to save the oiled penguins, headed up by 2 organizations well known for their rescue efforts. Salt River Station, an empty railroad maintenance warehouse in the industrial heart of Cape Town, was chosen as a viable rehab site. And within 1 day, water and electricity were installed, dry pools were set up, crushed shells were trucked in, and the rescue facility was up and running. Workers and volunteers captured the oiled birds and transported them from Dasson and Robben Islands by air, boat, and by truck to the facility where they would hopefully find refuge. Including the African penguin, there are 17 total species of these specialized seabirds, just like this rockhopper with the adorable yellow crest. And here's the chinstrap penguin, named for obvious reasons. And here's a couple gentoos. And this is a king penguin, just slightly smaller than the largest species, the emperor penguin. Lots of people make the mistake of thinking that penguins live at the North Pole. But it's the opposite, the South Pole, where many species reside. In fact, penguins are only found in the southern hemisphere. And if you think all penguins are about ice and snow, think again. Some species like the Magellanic, the Galapagos, the Humboldt, and the African penguins have adapted to warmer, temperate, and even tropical climates. Penguins eat krill, squid, and fish, and these fast-swimming birds catch their meals on the run, relying on their sharp sense of vision while hunting. Feeding the rescued African penguins was a primary concern for the caregivers. These birds had to be hand-fed, which was no small task considering the mounting size of this rescue. SeaWorld was one of many to respond to the African penguin disaster, sending 2 of their aviculturists halfway around the world to offer their services.
Back in 2000, when the Treasure sank off the coast of Cape Town, the South African government put out an international call for help. At that time, I had 13 years of experience working with penguins, a lot of hand-raising experience working with babies, so I think I was a good choice to go and assist with the rescue effort.
I was selected to go to South Africa because of the work that I've been able to do here at SeaWorld in San Diego of caring for penguins and also raising penguin chicks. Also, here at our park, we have an oiled wildlife care center where we have learned and been trained to care for oiled wildlife, particularly birds. And with that, going down to take care of the animals that were oiled, I was able to use those skills down there as well.
Even with years of experience under their belts, nothing prepared the rescue workers for this.
Our first day here was actually Sunday morning, and it was a complete shock to walk in and see the magnitude of this. Having worked with birds before in Orlando, I said, you know, a few penguins, how many could that be? But to see the number here was just overwhelming.
Overwhelming for the people and the penguins. Priorities had to be ranked in order to keep the birds alive, and food and water topped the list. But the volunteers quickly learned rescued penguins are not necessarily grateful for human help.
Right now we're doing a mixture of force feeding, offered hand feeding for the ones that are starting to get an idea of how to do it, and my team is currently going through and tube feeding some electrolytes to keep the birds going because dehydration is becoming a big issue. So we've got all 3 methods going on.
Literally tons of fish were necessary to keep the penguins alive. Antibiotics and vitamins were supplied to combat illness and infection under such stressful circumstances. One particular activity really had a positive effect on the birds. Rail cars were tipped on their sides, lined with tarps, and filled with water, resulting in some very happy penguins. The initial rescue attempts with the adult birds seemed well under control. But remember, this was the middle of breeding season. That means there's a whole other side to this story. February 28, 1982 was a special day at SeaWorld San Diego. It marked the hatching of the first hand-raised king penguin at the park. Since that time, Tut, as he came to be known, has sired several chicks. And today, at nearly 25 years old, he's still an important family member at SeaWorld. How's that for a penguin encounter? Penguin chicks in the wild can have a tough road ahead of them. Luckily, they have 2 attentive parents they can depend on. This Gen 2 chick hatched out at SeaWorld has a little bit easier time of it. There you go, buddy. With an entire staff of attentive caretakers looking after it. Unfortunately, after the oil spill, many of the penguin chicks were separated from their parents, and the outlook for their future was pretty grim, until the arrival of some helping human hands. Most species of penguins lay 1 or 2 eggs at a time, and generally only one of the chicks survives. Both parents actively participate in tending the eggs and raising their young. This actually created a problem for the African penguins following the oil spill. This spill wasn't big in comparison to other spills, but since it occurred during the penguin nesting season, it interfered with their feeding process. Penguin parents regurgitate partially digested fish and other food items to their chicks. In order to hunt their prey, the African penguins had to swim through the slick, and oiled feathers eventually would keep them from being waterproof and able to regulate their body temperature. Also, the birds often ingested oil, and when they returned to their nest, their regurgitated food was contaminated. So between the feather coating and the toxicity, it wouldn't take long before both the penguins and the chicks would perish. Luckily, Lauren Dubois and a team of experts arrived on the scene.
Well, when we first arrived, there was nothing set up for the chicks. They had set aside a room for us, but pretty much they were waiting for us to arrive. I was working with a colleague of mine from the Baltimore Zoo, Steve Serro, and we started making sure that we were getting the pens set up for the birds. We got tarps set up. We started getting some of our scales, anything that we thought we would need for the chicks.
Once an initial assessment was made of the chicks, one of two directions was taken. If they were older, they were moved to the area with the bigger birds. Or they began the process of rehab with Lauren's team.
The feeding process is pretty much force feeding them. We want them to get some food in there, which is pretty much grabbing the bird, opening up their bill, and putting a fish in their mouth. On the smaller birds, it's a little difficult because some of the fish is so big, so we'll just cut the fish in half and feed them some of the fish tails instead.
Under the rehab team's constant care, Lauren remained optimistic about the chicks' futures.
The outlook for these birds is very good, or at least I'm very hopeful. I look at these birds and they're very fat. They look in good shape. There's no oil on them. They all look very healthy. So the prognosis, I feel, is very good. I feel that we'll be able to go out and release these birds and at least give them a good chance to survive.
Penguins are warm-blooded seabirds that don't actually fly. Since they often have to endure frigid waters and extreme weather conditions, 4 primary adaptations help them survive. Their body fat that provides insulation, changes in their metabolic rate when they're on land versus when they're in the water, a blood flow system that adjusts to conserve or release body heat, and feathers. Their feathers are stiff and very thick. In fact, they're 7 times more dense than a chicken's. Although feathers play an important part in keeping them warm, temperate penguins, like the African penguin, need to release heat in warmer weather. So unfeathered, bare patches around their eyes and beaks allow heat to escape. Left alone, the oiled penguin's feathers would no longer be waterproof, and eventually the birds would become waterlogged, unable to swim and unable to regulate their body temperature. Cleaning the feathers was essential before the birds could survive in the wild.
We work together as a team to be picking animals for wash. It's important that the animal is strong enough and healthy enough to be washed.
First, the birds were sprayed with vegetable oil to dissolve the tanker oil.
The difference between when they go into the cleaning room and come out of the cleaning room is phenomenal.
Then, they were washed in dishwashing soap. They were washed
They have their black and white coloration back.
and washed
And the birds look so good.
and then washed again.
They even look happier.
Next, they were rinsed in fresh water, then set under heat lamps to dry overnight.
There is no long-term effects from the oil with regards to their feather coloration.
It took 2 volunteers on the average of 1 hour to wash 1 penguin. So on a good day, 500 to 600 penguins were washed. Cleaned birds also received fluids, vitamins, and a flipper band for identification. The Cape Town rescue was a collective, massive effort. In the end, would it make a difference? Only time would tell. Animal rescues aren't always on a big scale, so it was a lucky day for one little penguin when the staff at SeaWorld San Antonio got pretty creative. They discovered a crack in one of their penguin's eggshells and sealed it up with glue. Elmer, as he was appropriately named, hatched with no problem at all, and today is a SeaWorld celebrity ambassador, teaching kids all around the country about penguins and a caring staff's ingenuity. How's that for a penguin encounter? Times of crisis really show what the human spirit is made of. For a total of 6 weeks, the people in Cape Town worked tirelessly, side by side, to help save the oiled penguins. IFA and Sandcob organized this enormous effort, pulling in corporate, government, and nonprofit partners from around the globe. We've all heard the expression, it takes a village. Well, in this case, it took that and more.
It's a lot to manage, but we're doing it.
Are you wondering what it takes to coordinate a rescue this big? Every aspect has to be thought out and responded to, and it all has to happen like yesterday. International Fund for Animal Welfare, or IFA, And South African Foundation for the Conservation of Coastal Birds, SANCOB for short, pulled together dozens of organizations for the effort, and supplies and donations poured in. Fish, lots of fish, in fact 361 tons at Salt River alone. Vitamins, equipment, pools and liners, cleaning agents, cleaning gear, protective gear, boxes, transportation, even a Red Cross station was set up inside the facility to care for human injuries. And then you need the people to make it all happen. So how do you spread the word?
On the radio 2-3 times a day, about 4 or 5 different local and national radio slots. I talk to people, I cajole them, I beg them, and we've had an overwhelming response.
Of course, a booming voice helps.
My bid had to be a big body with a big voice, and I just organize the people, I yell at them, I smile at them, I encourage them, and I keep the things going.
Thousands of volunteers answered. People came after putting in a full shift at their regular jobs. Day after day they showed up with big smiles and amazing attitudes as they got ready to do some very dirty work.
The cleaning, the scrubbing, it's not all glamorous. There's a lot of hard back-breaking work in it, but it's all part. We're all here for the penguins.
It's all about the penguins, but it was the people that made it all about the penguins. This shared sense of coming together for the cause moved literally every one of the workers.
I never had the remotest idea what this would be like. This is utterly overwhelming.
People are coming together. Most of us are here on a volunteer basis, and that's been a super part of this. It's been great to be here.
It's important for us to also be involved in that conservation, and so this is our opportunity to do the right thing.
When you have a disaster like this, and I think that's an appropriate word, is a disaster, considering this is one of the largest animal rescues ever, to take a look at something, things that are involved, is just getting the people here to help out.
It's an important cause over here.
But Big Mike said it best.
If we had to factor in the cost of the manpower, it would be astronomical. And the only reason we keep the costs down is because the people are prepared to help. And Cape Townians, we're a great bunch of people. We rock!
All the volunteers were a great bunch of people. All 40,000 of them. Because in the end, that's how many people showed up to help the African penguins. Standing over 3 feet tall, the largest of the penguins, the emperor penguin, lives its entire life in and around Antarctica. SeaWorld San Diego became the first place outside of Antarctica to hatch and raise an emperor chick. Since then, all the SeaWorld parks continue to participate in comprehensive breeding programs for all of our penguins, welcoming many additions to our SeaWorld family. How's that for a penguin encounter? The response to the African penguin crisis shows what can happen when people join forces for wildlife conservation. Because of thousands of helping hands, the vulnerable population of African penguins got a second chance at survival. And all this time, energy, and hard work was leading up to a single goal: the day the penguins could be released and swim home.
This spill in South Africa, in Cape Town, is probably, to the best of my knowledge, one of the largest responses in history to oiled wildlife. It may not be the largest spill by volume of oil spilled, and it may not have the most miles of coastline affected, but it by far has the most live animals retrieved, brought into captivity for rehabilitation. So this is an extremely large spill response here in Cape Town.
After 6 weeks of caring for the oiled birds, the last penguin rescued received his bath, and it was time to send the final birds home.
Fortunately, these chicks right here were not oiled, so we didn't have to clean them.
Several weeks had passed since the chicks had been rescued. They thrived under the watchful eyes of the rescue team, so they were strong and healthy and ready to survive on their own. Their down was replaced with waterproof feathers, making it possible for them to swim from the shore to their home islands.
Well, this is what it's all about.
It's come full circle, so it feels like all of the efforts have been a success in seeing these set free. And
before their release, they were sprayed with pink dye, so researchers could easily identify them. The adult penguins were marked as well, and then fitted with an ID tag on their flipper. Finally, the birds were crated and ready to transport to the sea. It was an emotion-packed day for the workers and volunteers.
To actually reach a goal like this is truly remarkable.
This was definitely a good day for us.
Relief is a big one. The relief is a big one. They got out before anything bad could happen to them.
So in the long ride for these chicks that we've released, and I'm very happy for them. They're doing extremely well. It was a nice release.
It's always wonderful wherever I am, even if it's one bird or 600. That's awesome. It's a wonderful feeling because it's an accomplishment.
It was a long haul for both the animals and the people, but in the end, a remarkable contribution to penguin conservation. Not all of the birds taken off Robben and Dasson Islands were oiled. In an attempt to prevent these birds from becoming harmed, volunteers saved 21,000 penguins by collecting unoiled birds and transporting them to Port Elizabeth and releasing them to swim home, where they would arrive after the worst of the oil spill was over. This step in prevention is a strong example of proactive conservation. Today, many human activities are impacting penguins. Hunting, coastal development, pollution, and overharvesting of fish stocks that penguins eat top the list of threats. Currently, all 17 species of penguins are legally protected, and at least 5 species are considered at risk for becoming extinct. Like IFAW and Sandcob, other groups such as the Captive Breeding Specialist Group work towards the conservation of penguins. The SeaWorld parks maintain Emperor, King, Macaroni, Adelie, Gentoo, Chinstrap, Rockhopper, Magellanic, and Humboldt penguins, and each of these species has successfully reproduced. SeaWorld San Diego participates in the species survival plan for the endangered Humboldt penguin, helping to maintain diversity within this species. In addition, SeaWorld parks also employ 2 stud bookkeepers to track the captive breeding of Chinstrap, Adelie, and King penguins. Finally, the Oiled Wildlife Care Center at SeaWorld San Diego serves as a valuable resource to assist oiled animals in times of crisis.
The Oiled Wildlife Care Center is set up to do everything for an animal during an oil spill, and that includes the intake procedures, evaluating the animal, washing the animal, whether it's a mammal or a bird, and also care for the animals and support before the animal would be able to be released.
Major disasters remind us how vulnerable an entire animal population can be. But a crisis isn't the only time you can help. Conservation happens every day at a local level. Get involved with a zoological park or aquarium in your town and find out what you can do. When the Cape Town call for action was heard around the world, many responded. We offered help, but what we got back in return was invaluable.
There are so many wonderful animals in this world. There are so many wonderful people in the world that care so much about them. To see everybody come together and want to work and really just take care of those animals was incredible. I think being able to come back and share that with the people here in the United States and just even at SeaWorld has been the greatest thing for me.
I learned more about people, myself included, on this trip, I think, than any single thing I've done to date. The sheer number of volunteers that showed up every day at the Salt River railway station was just overwhelming. It just kind of reaffirms your faith in humanity when you see how willing people are to donate their time. It really showed that people can truly be compassionate when there's another species that's in need of their help.
The African penguin rescue remains the largest, most successful bird rescue in history to date. Over 40,000 volunteers saved more than 43,000 birds total. They cleaned about 22,000 birds and achieved a 90% survival rate upon their release. This monumental success happened because a lot of caring people showed up and made a difference. From Busch Gardens and SeaWorld, I'm Julie Scardina. Thanks for watching The Penguin Story.
Hi, I'm Ginny Bush, Conservation Ambassador for the Anheuser-Busch Adventure Parks. SeaWorld, Busch Gardens, and Discovery Cove are dedicated to the conservation and preservation of wildlife. And we believe the stories like the one you just experienced need to be told. The penguins featured in this program are just a few of the many species that benefit from the SeaWorld and Busch Gardens Conservation Fund, a non-profit charitable organization dedicated to animal rescue, wildlife research, habitat protection, and conservation education. Your support through the continued viewing of programs like this is appreciated. I encourage you to learn all you can about animals and their environment. Remember, we're all interconnected. What happens to them eventually happens to us. So we need to protect them and their habitat. Together, we can make a difference.